one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life is trying to break this negative habit. And this negative habit was gaming. Gaming for me was a huge problem. And, I've always been a kind of gamer, even going back to when I was a kid. But over time, I kind of coupled that with smoking weed and, marijuana, which really caused my gaming addiction to get bad. But, you don't really realize how much of an addiction or a negative habit that you create when you're doing these things until some sort of revelation happens. So in today's video, we're going to kind of go over some negative habits, maybe some of the things that you guys are doing in your own lives and how it translates to your everyday life and your lifestyle. And then we'll kind of break down more in depth what you can do to help overcome those negative habits. So negative habits can really feel like an unbreakable cycle. As I mentioned earlier, it's not something I really realized I had a problem with or it was a negative habit until it started to trickle into other areas of my life. My work was suffering, my relationships with my family, my wife was suffering. So there's a lot of telltale signs that really you can, maybe unknowingly kind of just continuously bypass by, like my rationale for my negative habit of gaming was like, well, it takes me away from the everyday stresses of life. And in some cases, that's how it starts, right? It starts very small, but then over time, when you begin to feed that negative habit, it sort of just blossoms into this whole thing that you just don't realize it because you're attributing it to something, like it's relieving your stress or it's taking you out of the reality of the real world. But the fact of the matter is these negative habits that you're creating they're subtle, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of your everyday lifestyle, it's really going to be very pivotal for you if you're trying to become something or you're trying to pursue these habits. These negative habits are really going to contribute to you not being able to achieve those goals that you so ambitiously are seeking and attacking every day. Because why would you attack them, and only to realize obviously the hope is to realize that in the end. But if you are just constantly saying, I know this is a bad thing for me, but I'm going to continuously do it anyways. And the counter to that is you're complaining about your life and where you're at. Those two things don't really add up. So, it's definitely something you got to be cognizant of. And, there's a lot of different things that when you're going about your life and you're evaluating yourself, I talk heavily about writing down your thoughts, journaling, kind of writing out your goals so that you can kind of keep these things trackable. And another huge component to this is like having a support system. My wife for the longest time asked me, are you okay? Things seem off. And I was always the kind of guy that was, like, oh, I'm fine. My father grew up doing the same thing. I'm sure to some extent his father grew up doing the same thing. But, so you're kind of just repeating these behaviors that you see in your own life. And again, the people that you have that are closely in your life, hopefully they're people that are like, they have your best interests at heart. And, like someone like my wife definitely did. And so the constantly like asking for me sort of got annoying, but that's just because of where my mindset was at the time and like kind of how I was feeling towards myself. I was sort of in a depression. So, a lot of these things can contribute to the negative habits as well. But, having all these things that I mentioned, support system, making sure that you're doing some self-reflection, these kinds of stuff, if you do it daily, if it's something that you just haven't done, in quite some time or at all, go through YouTube and watch some videos. I've got videos up there, but you don't have to watch mine, of course. There's a lot of good YouTubers out there. There's a lot of good information out on the internet about ways to go about journaling and doing some things that will help you really self-reflect and make it so you don't really fall into these negative habits that really can contribute to such a poor lifestyle or a poor, way of living. And you want to make sure that all this stuff is in line with what you want to do with your life. I'll talk about another bad habit that I used to have, and it was procrastination. I'm sure a lot of people, run into of the negative habit of procrastination. It's a very common thing, but about 5 or 6 months ago when I was going through my latest bout of depression, when you realize the habit loop, it's cue, routine, and reward, these things are applicable to negative habits as well as positive habits. So, I would do things like go down to my computer, as I'm doing right now, and instead of doing things productively, like writing out some guidelines for a script for a YouTube video, jotting down notes as I go along. As I mentioned to you guys, I have my book, I'm writing stuff, it's pages of writing and again, self-reflection. So, I wasn't always very good at doing this stuff. I would do it intermittently, but to stay on topic, it was instead of coming down to do this, I would do something, kind of like maybe jot on my phone, kind of whatever, watch some TikTok videos or, go on Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. And that was the cue to a routine that would cause procrastination. So I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, I was waking up in the morning, going to work, miserable, wondering why. When all along in my head, I'm like, yeah, of course you're sort of getting depressed. Of course you're not happy. You're not doing any of the things that you say you want to do. So it was a bit of a fulfilling prophecy for me. And if you're experiencing that with yourself, comment down below. Let me know what the hardest thing about your bad habits you've had to overcome, or what is your, bad habit that really held you up or is currently holding you up. I'd like to know. But yeah, it's just another thing that I've faced in my lifetime. And, it comes and goes. Sometimes I'll be down here and, before I get myself going, maybe before I kind of get down. So I like to set my desk up for success. When I come down here, I know exactly. Before I would come down here, just kind of like, putz around, I'd grab something. Again, like I mentioned, I grab my phone. So setting yourself up for success for that task for the day or that task for the night. So what that looks like for me is I go to work in the morning, though. I've got positive habits that I have in that habit loop where I'm cueing a routine and then the reward is after the fact. That I'll mention this in another video that I'll kind of point to at the end. But you got to set yourself up for the day. And that doesn't mean just for, going to work or it literally means everything. Relationships, goals that you're set for yourself, all these things, have to be nurtured in the right way. So again, just a little bit of a side rant on some of the things that I face, and hopefully you guys can take away some of these tips and tricks that I kind of share with you in my own experience that will help you in your guys' self-growth journey. So as I mentioned, maybe let's break down some of the common reasons behind why negative habits form. And in some of these examples, really, I think one of the biggest ones, especially in today's society, is really going to be immediate gratification. Social media has really sort of spun this weird, everything, you can get everything now. And in some instances, yes, I suppose that's true, but in a lot of cases, especially as it pertains to certain things, like the amount of entrepreneurs, that are maybe an online entrepreneurs or something, and they're selling courses like make whatever, 10K a month or something like that. And I would say that there's a lot of people that everybody has the potential to do that, but also it's not as easy as that's like a headliner, right? It's look at where we're at with just propaganda from major news organizations. You put a headline on and it's supposed to just gaslight you and trigger some sort of emotion. That's kind of what these things do. And again, I'm not throwing shade at people that can actually, they're actually doing this and potentially selling a course that actually help people. I think that's great. But at the end of the day, if you're just hoping I can buy this course and then in a month, generally speaking, I'm going to just make 10K, I don't believe it's, that easy. You know what I mean? I certainly think it can, but if you've got to have some sort of groundwork, some sort of leg for you to stand on. You can't just not have any sort of experience, or you haven't put any hard work behind something and expect it just to go your way, especially if you haven't built any positive habits for yourself and you're only running on hopes and dreams. Nothing wrong with hopes and dreams, but you got to build some stuff. You got to have something behind you that's really going to, when you make that step forward, it's I'm here and I know exactly what I'm doing. So, those types of things are sort of contribute to that instant gratification, losing weight, take this pill, lose 20 pounds. It's just, you're trying to take a step before you take the ultimate step, which is putting in the work to really make the changes you want to see. Fitness and nutrition and your health is just that's probably one you see the most. Everyone wants to have the body that they desire, they see, other people have, especially on social media. But, you're not just gonna, buy someone's program. You're not just gonna buy someone's nutrition plan. You're not just gonna take supplements. I take supplements, but I'd be foolish to think that if I just take these supplements, I'm gonna achieve the body that I want. Is it going to help me in my pursuit of that? Of course. I mean, it's a supplement, it's going to supplement your ability to lose weight or have more energy, so on and so forth, increase protein muscle synthesis, blah, 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 all this stuff. It's not the thing that's going to give it to you as soon as you'd like it to be. And, that kind of stuff over time has sort of just been, again, I think it's contributing to social media. And I think a lot of it is, it's wrong, but it sells, it makes people money. So they're going to continue to propagate that to the masses. But, that's not going to be you, right? You're going to put in the hard work. You're going to put in all the time it takes so that when you meet that crossroads in your life, you're going to say, I'm ready to take that next step into the pursuit of your own goals. And I think that's very important. Another common reason that I really think, or a lot of people struggle with rather, is like stress and emotional stress, emotional distress, stuff like that. I think especially, and I'm going to talk a lot about where we're at as a society, because I think we're definitely going backwards, not forwards. But a lot of people experience stress, whether that's through their daily work. Everything nowadays just sort of elevates stress, especially if you're not taking care of your body and your mind. You're going to experience more stress than the other person. I'm not going to brag. I'm not a conceited person, but at the end of the day, I'm very health conscious, and I've experienced a lot of mental health issues. So now it's even more of a precedent for me to set the standard, not just for myself, but for my family. I don't want to put my families through that. I've already done enough of that, and I don't want to be that person. So I need to cognitively, pay attention to exactly how I'm treating myself. Because if I'm not treating myself with respect, then I'm most certainly not going to get the most out of myself. And I can't give that to my wife. I can't give that to my daughter. I can't give that to my family members who most certainly, they need that. Our families, my family, your family, they need you to be the person that you're capable of becoming. And if you're just constantly living in this elevated state of emotional and, elevated distress, and the stress is you're experiencing off the charts, you're not going to really help anyone, let alone yourself. So I think some important things you can do for that, is just potentially, as I've discussed, write out self-reflection journal, go seek therapy if it's something that is really serious, exercising, eating correctly, bring those hormones in balance. So all these things really contribute to making sure that your emotional stress and your emotional distress really maintains at least an even peak. You want to be that equilibrium into a status quo. You don't want to just go, the ups and downs are really what cause frustrations for a lot of people. And that's definitely, curable, maybe not the right word, but definitely something you can manage by taken care of, especially in mental. Last common reason I really want to touch on, I think this one is maybe underlooked by a lot of people, and that's really just boredom. I've experienced that a lot in my lifetime, and early on in my 20s, I didn't have direction with my life at all. I didn't come from a household that had a lot of direction either. My dad didn't graduate from middle school. My mom didn't graduate from middle school, so they couldn't teach me the things that most parents should be teaching their kids. Most certainly not the way I'm going to teach my daughter. My daughter is going to know exactly what she wants to do. Maybe not exactly, but she's going to have, I'll say this, she's going to have the skill set to be able to recognize or determine what she wants out of her life, because it's going to be, I can't necessarily set it. I can set up a lot of things for her. Obviously, I'm not going to tell her what to do or what she should. I'll give her direction. As you can see, there's some give and take, but at the end of the day, she's going to have the skill set to make an informed decision on the life she wants to live, and she's going to be well equipped to handle life as it comes at her. So whatever she does want to do, she'll be very successful at it. Unlike, someone coming from my situation, it's hard. I don't want to just, I'm not bashing my parents or anything, but, at the end of the day, they did not equip me or my brothers or my sister with the skills necessary to, once we hit adult life, what the heck were we doing? What are we going to, we had some guidance, but it definitely wasn't enough to go out into the real world and just be ready to attack it. Life hit us right in the mouth and just, we started floundering and we just wasted a lot of time. So I do feel like boredom and this, lack of purpose comes into play. You want to be diligent with your life. There's like sayings out there, right, that just really don't make a lot of sense. Like, oh, party now, live later. Okay, well, by the time you hit 60, 65, depending on how you treated yourself, you're not going to be in a very healthy, body's going to be in decline, your mental state's going to be in decline. How much crap have you experienced between then? If I could go back to my, teenage years and set myself, I would do it differently. Obviously, you can't do that. I wouldn't really change how I've experienced life, because I do feel like that's helped me in a lot of different areas, but I most certainly would set myself up for a better outcome, at least right out the gate. Then I wouldn't have to, just rely on my negative experiences to, have dug myself out of these holes. And I'll be able to teach my daughter some valuable lessons about how to go about life, but it most certainly would have been nice to avoid that, because I feel like if I would have known what I know now, I definitely would have been way far ahead, had I started doing that in my 20s. So you kind of get where I'm going with that. Boredom and lack of purpose is probably a pretty big contributing factor that a lot of people don't realize. So set yourself up, take it seriously. From the moment you are able, your parents should be guiding you and helps, again, like I mentioned, I'm going to set Clara up for an absolute successful life. She's going to have these things in place so that when she's going to pursue her thing, the last thing she needs to worry about is whatever it is, money, the skill set that she needs. You know, she's not going to lack confidence. She's not going to lack direction. That's really going to help her be successful in the long run. So we talked about some common reasons that you might be forming these negative habits, but now we're going to kind of talk about some of the challenges that you're going to face when you're going to go about breaking these challenges. And the number one thing I can think of right off the top of my head is really lack of awareness. A lack of awareness is something that I really had for many, many years in my life. You know, before I started journaling, is before I really started to think about, how I was attacking my day, how I was setting myself up for the day. And, at the end of the day, it's just not realizing that you are doing this negative habit. For me, a huge one was procrastination. Another big one, as I mentioned, was gaming. Gaming is very fun. I do feel like I have an addictive personality. So there's some things that I just need to realize, hey, super close attention to what I'm doing. By the way, I would say that to some extent, I am now sort of addicted to the process of creating videos. I've become over analytical of some of the things that I'm trying to do, or maybe some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish from a video. At the end of the day, my goal is to help the person behind this camera, not make the same mistakes that I did, and, use my experience to help you overcome them, so on and so forth, to become a better person, to become the person that you're destined to become. In lieu of that, I am over analytical. As I showed this a little bit earlier, but this is a 4-page outline, talking points that in previous videos, I've tried to stick to that, super strictly, not allow my mind to just go into those creative pockets and really pull that out of my mind, because it's all up there. But at the end of the day, I just get over analytical, and it's because I get super obsessed with the process of what I'm doing. And that causes me to be like, oh, it's gotta be perfect. It's gotta be perfect. Nothing that you ever do will be, at some point, if you do enough, you can do it enough, and you get super comfortable with it. Like, this is comfortable to me, but I always feel like it needs to be perfect. Otherwise, I can't release, so on and so forth. So you get the idea. Some of these things, again, they're little things that you don't really realize. And that's a huge one, the lack of awareness of what you're doing. If you have a lack of awareness, doing these things, like I've mentioned before, and I will mention several times over and over and over again, is diary, self-reflect, write out your thoughts in pursuit of everything you're trying to do, and you'll be able to overcome lack of awareness. The next one I'll mention is really, basically, it's inconsistent effort. So kind of tie this into that immediate gratification from our common reasons. They're going to go hand in hand. If you are, let's just say, for instance, you're trying to change your physical body, trying to improve your physical health, and maybe even your mental health, whatever it is. Let's go with physical health though. Maybe you think about, New Year's resolutions. Come January, everyone wants to try to get their, healthiest body of the year. But so many people fall off right after January, maybe February, whatever. Why is that? Why are you not following through? Is because you have an inconsistent effort. Maybe you're not seeing the instant gratification that you're hoping for. Maybe you thought, maybe someone sold you a bill of goods like, oh, if you do my program, you'll see results in 30 days, lose 20 pounds in 30 days, and you're taking that pill, right? It's Ozempic. That's a huge one. That's, not good for your health, by the way, but you're seeing the idea. You want to put together consistent effort and realize that some things are just not going to take, you're not going to achieve them in 30 days. You're not going to achieve them in 60 days. You're not going to achieve them in months. Hell, sometimes you're not going to achieve them in years. I've been in that mind. I think about my YouTube channel all the time. Like, if I just stay consistent with the reality of what I'm trying to achieve here, that's just help one person behind this camera, it becomes easy. But at the end of the day, I get super hyper focused on, as I said, the addiction of like the process and the result. Like, it's not about the views, but I do get tied into that. It's like, oh, well, it's not, people aren't seeing my videos. The right person will see the video, and at the end of the day, that person will reach out, so on and so forth. Maybe they're interested in coaching, whatever have you. If I just focus on that, things get a lot easier. So inconsistent effort, immediate gratification, those go hand in hand. Don't allow yourself to, get too struck on, why am I not achieving the results in the desired time? You got to have patience with yourself, and it takes 4 weeks to see physical change in your body. So give yourself at least 4 weeks. And if you're doing it right, and you're not over complicating your diet plan or your nutrition plan, you'll see these prolonged results over time, rather than just like, I need to, outside of maybe a wedding or something, you're trying to lose 5 to 10 pounds. That's a little different, but also like that can be dangerous because, you might be doing it in the wrong ways. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but inconsistent effort. That's kind of the last one I want to touch on here is one that is probably pretty common as well. And that's like triggers and temptations. So put it like this, maybe you're trying to quit drinking alcohol, but your group of friends are all maybe not alcoholics, but they like to go out on the weekends, they go to the bars, drink. So you have all the good intentions in the world, and maybe during the week, busy, you don't really drink a lot. But on the weekends, when you're trying to hang out with your friends, what do? You want to be part of the group, you want to go have fun. So you go out there and maybe peer pressure gets the best of you and you realize, I want to drink or something of that nature. So obviously hanging out with that group of people, doing that routine and going out with them, it's going to trigger, and it's obviously a temptation. It's going to trigger you to want to be a part of the group or not want to, be left out, that kind of FOMO mentality or that feeling. So that's a big one. Obviously it can be anything. And alcohol is just an example, but it can be with, for me, it was gaming. My brothers and I gamed for a very long time. My good friend at the time, that's how we connected. So it's like, I'm not calling him up, which I probably should have, just give him a call or like try to drive however long distance to go hang out with them. We would get online and meet online. It's like when you're online and you're gaming for a little bit, it just turns into an intention of an hour gaming with your best friend to 6 hours of mindlessly numbing act. Didn't help me out at all. So recognize that if you have a group of friends that maybe don't really contribute to the overall goals and the overall direction of how you want to go about your life, that might be something to look at. So temptation and something that might trigger these bad habits, something you might want to look at. So if we're going to break these negative habits, if you're going to break these negative habits, you're going to need a plan to move forward. And you can't just go about like hoping things are going to change. You got to plan it out. And again, I'm going to keep coming back to it, writing out your goals, writing out this plan. I created a 30-day, development plan, self-reflection, self-development plan that, really helped me kickstart when I was coming out of my recent depression. 6 months of self-sabotage, it was pretty bad. I was in a bad way. Made some huge mistakes, but I put this plan together and it really helped me put stuff on paper that I wanted to achieve and actionable steps every month moving forward. Now I haven't written one out and, I definitely need to write another one out to get, where my baseline is at the time or right now. But at the time it was like, this is what I need to focus on. This is how I'm going to go about doing it. So planning out how you're going to break these habits is going to be huge. We'll kind of talk about some details about what that plan might look like and how you can approach it. So some of the key steps you can take when you're putting together this plan and you're following through on it, as I mentioned before, one of the biggest ones that you can put together is just a strong support team. I've got my wife, I've got my immediate family, my brothers, we're very close, my sister. They're all like, maybe it's not something that we talk every single day. With my wife, obviously, she's the one that I do talk with every day. She's my biggest supporter, someone who's always looking out for my mental, even my physical and spiritual health. She's always there to push me. She always knows like, hey, if just to ask, because sometimes I may come off as like super stoic. That's just sometimes, most of the time, just my general is like, I try to stay even keeled, but she's going to ask because she has like a negative experience with that version of me. Or like if she thinks that something's wrong, she might contribute to some of the mistakes I've made in the past. So she's always going to ask now, but I appreciate that because, there are times where I haven't been that. So the fact that she's there to support me in that nature, it just allows me to be vulnerable, allows me to let her know like exactly how I'm feeling. And, if it is bad, in the past, I've been, sort of not necessarily afraid to say something, but it's just like, I didn't feel like I should burden someone else with it, or like I could always handle my own stuff. But, you need to have that support system around you to really help you realize and self-reflect and, lean on those guys when you're going through a hard time. It's not a bad thing. You got to drop your pride and just allow your team to really help push you through if you need it. Another big one, obviously we're talking about negative habits, but what you really want to start trying to do for this plan is to replace your negative habits with positive. So, let's say when you're stressed, you go reach for the candy bars or the pop, whatever it is. Food is your stress relief. You really want to try to find something like positive habit to replace that negative one. It's not going to happen overnight rather, but you got to start implementing that. Every time you get super stressed, recognize the negative habit that you contribute to that elevated stress. Okay, it's eating. Instead of going to that cupboard, go for a walk. Again, it's something you got to be very cognitive about. You got to put action behind this. You're not just gonna, your body's not just gonna do it, right? You can create a sort of, a habit that you don't really have to think about. Over time, it can become that, but you really have to put the action behind it to make it stick. It's not just gonna happen once. It's like, oh, I went for a walk, great. Yeah, you need to just continuously, when you feel elevated stress levels, if you have the ability to, go for that walk, or, drink water instead, or listen to some music, or go meditate, go stretch, go work out. Like all these things are positive reinforcement habits that you can replace with these negative ones. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be super easy, but you can do it. It's something that will help you in the long run, and especially help you achieve all the goals and all the things that you set out to in your life. Last but not least, obviously for this plan to attack your negative habits, you want to set clear goals. Clear goals of just what do you want? Why do you want to change these negative habits? You got to have something that, ties it to, something, you got to have that strong something that ties you to the why, right? They always say it's the why. What's your why? Well, I'm not a huge fan of that because I think there's a lot of reasons of why someone would want to stop a negative habit. One, it just feels crappy, right? I don't spend 5 hours, back when this was a problem for me. I didn't spend 5 to 6 hours straight gaming my life away, and then in the middle of it, really, sort of like saying, this sucked. At the end of it, I was just kind of like, what the heck just happened? So you got to really put it in perspective and realize like the goal that you're writing out are what are going to make this plan work. You're not just going to hope that, a plan, all comes together in the end. It's like wait and see. No, you got to put action behind that plan and the goals that you're setting. And, it's whatever you want them to be. But at the end of the day, you need to know what they are. You're not just going to, mindlessly, go about your day hoping that it's just all going to work out. So set some clear goals for yourself, write them out, and then every day take some sort of step toward that goal. And at the end of the day, you'll get there. If you're actually putting the intentionality behind it, you'll achieve this and you'll get to the point where these negative habits are reinforced with positive. So listen, guys, patience is going to be a huge thing. In order to begin to overcome this, you got to celebrate the small victories. The small victories are going to come every time you hit some sort of milestone with, overcoming these negative habits or replacing with positive ones. Write it out, celebrate it in some sort of way that allows you and your small support system to reinforce that what you're doing is actually necessary and you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing to become the person that you want to be. I see all too often people don't really celebrate enough, and I've definitely done that myself. When I achieve something that seems small to me, my wife says, that's really awesome. Like, that's really cool that you've accomplished this. I'm like, yeah, it's what it is, but it's a big deal. So you got to celebrate the small, these achievements really show that change can be made, and these moments reinforce that change is possible. The more you hit these small wins, the more they're going to stack up, become big wins in the end. So listen, guys, going to wrap it up pretty much. Breaking negative habits, isn't easy, but with the right mindset and the right support system, setting clear goals, reflecting on how you're doing, achieving small victories, all this stuff is going to play a huge factor in you actually overcoming these negative habits once and for all. So, if you've enjoyed this video, I really appreciate you hit the like, subscribe button. I love hearing you guys' thoughts in the comments as well. As I mentioned, let me know what kind of negative habits you're experiencing and how you're going about trying to take that on. If you have any questions at all, please ask. I'm always here to help. And in addition to these negative habits, I want you guys to go ahead and watch this video. This is kind of the video that we talked about last week about creating positive habits. And I think this will really go hand in hand with this negative habits video. So I hope you use this to your advantage, and we'll see you in the next.